Welcome to the Blueprint Podcast with your host. I'm Zach Heyer.
And I'm Spencer Maxwell. Mark Peebles, we're having a blast. So,
wow.
Hey,
I thought this was a business podcast, not a giggly little girl podcast.
Yeah, see there already. See how we're starting this thing off.
Oh man.
Well, I just gave the guest away for the day. But
Dang
Zach,
it, Spencer.
who do we have?
Today it's a big day for the Blueprint, Spencer.
Yeah.
We officially have our first guest.
Wow.
Mark's our guinea pig.
Yes.
That's right.
And Mark is a great businessman. He's a great Christian, and we have the privilege to be able to call him friend.
Yeah.
Mark, how you doing?
I'm awesome. And guys, I'll be honest. I'm so excited to be on the Blueprint podcast. I've listened to the first 2 episodes, and I'm kind of surprised that you picked me for number 3. I'm hoping that I don't bring your level down,
Our ratings are gonna
because
die.
honestly, I've been super impressed so far. And obviously, Zach, I've known you for several years now.
Yeah, right.
And Spencer, you and I have gotten to know each other over the last, several months. And I just have such a respect for you guys. And this is just such a great opportunity to join you.
Well,
yeah, man. Well, like we just talked about in episode 2, the value of mentorship and wisdom. And you've been that for us. So, of course, you are our first
100%.
choice.
Well, thank you.
100%. And just know that there is a ton of respect
Oh, that's
from
awesome.
this
Thanks.
side as well.
Thank
you. We appreciate you coming on, man. And honestly, because Spencer and I were talking, we were like, for episode number 3, we kind of want to talk a little bit about real estate because Spencer's obviously a real estate professional.
Yep.
I was in the real estate niche for a while, but on the investment side.
Well, actually, Zach, come on. You were in real estate on my team at one point.
Yeah, that was for a short period of time, but yeah, honestly, it allowed me to meet you and
Right.
get introduced to you. So I think that God has a plan.
He does.
for everything.
He does.
So-
You know what's like a blueprint?
Yeah.
How about
I
we need
love
to-
it. Wow.
I
You
love
guys should
button.
use that. I'll
I
let you
love it.
use that. We'll sign a contract after.
So we'll give you a kickback.
Okay, good.
Yeah, a little fee for that.
Yeah.
That's good.
Yeah.
Well, the blueprint of the blueprint to roll with it is to educate, motivate, and inspire through stories and experiences. So, Mark, we want to hear about your story. What
Cool.
makes Mark Peebles Mark Peebles?
Wow. That is a big question. And I don't know how long we have here.
Yeah.
So
We got as much time as you need.
Okay, well, that's good because it could take a long time. I've got a lot to my story. I born and raised around this area, and I met my wife in college, Elizabeth, and we've been blessed to have 3 amazing kids. So Tommy is, at the time of recording this, 20 years old. He's an entrepreneur, has his own business, and actually also works for Navex Realty, which is my company. I'm sure we're going to talk a little bit about that. I know you're a little bit familiar with that company, Spencer. But then Olivia, she's amazing. She's 18 years old, supposed to be a senior in high school this year, and went to ministry school a year early. And she just wants to serve the Lord. And so that girl's faith challenges me every day. She's amazing. And then my youngest is Alicia. And Ellie was our surprise. And she was born on fire. And so that kid has a fiery personality. She's going to do great things in the world, great things for the kingdom of God. And I'm just so excited to see what happens. And we're going to talk, I know part of this today, we'll probably talk important pieces of my story and the importance of the legacy with my kids and future generations. So I know we'll get into that. But met Elizabeth. We ended up coming back to Dayton, and I ended up joining Pfizer. Wanted to be in pharmaceutical sales. And I ended up getting my first position out of college with Pfizer, and it brought us back to Dayton. We wanted to stay in Columbus, where we had gone to college at Otterbein College, but that was not the path that we ended up on. And so ended up here in Dayton, had 5 years with Pfizer. And then my dad in 2006 sat down with me, said, "Hey, son, I've been in the business." It was 30 some odd years at that point. And he said, I don't have anyone to pass this on to, and I'd really like for you to consider coming into real estate. So in 2006, I decided to go into real estate and join my dad. But really, when it comes, I know you guys talk about a lot about the entrepreneurial journey, and you're both entrepreneurs. I'm an entrepreneur, but going way back to my entrepreneurial journey, and then I'll come back to how things worked out through Pfizer. But my parents, when I was 9 years old, they started me in a mowing business, and my uncle used to build houses, and he would build spec homes up and down the street. And then I would go, and just so happened my grandparents lived in the neighborhood, and so we'd take a lawnmower over there, and I would cut all the grass, and then I would go back and weed eat all the yards, and then I would go and sweep off all the driveways, and mom and dad would come back and pick me up and take me home. So that was when I was 9. When I was 10, my uncle said, "Hey, I've got an office complex and a condo complex that we built, and I want to know, can Mark cut that?" And so the next day, my dad was out with me, and we bought our first commercial mower. He went to hey, I've got an alarm going off my phone.
Okay,
I set an alarm here. It's going off kind of silent. Can you guys hear that? I set this alarm just so that I could remind you to shut your alarms off.
Shade has been thrown.
Okay.
That's two.
You know what?
That's 2 episodes in a row.
That is going to drive great. You know what, Mark? Thank you. That's going to drive tremendous traffic back to episode 2.
Oh,
Thanks
good.
for the views.
That's good. There you go.
So
hey,
if none of you have listened to episode 2, we had a little alarm incident that Spencer had. So this was just kind of a reversion of that. So
and as a mentor, as someone that's in mentorship, you really you do things to help those that you're mentoring to be successful.
You made me feel better about
Good.
myself.
Good.
I love it.
So I just had to do that just to have fun with you guys. That was honestly, I got a good giggle out of that from the last episode. But where were we in the story? When my dad,
mowers,
the mower. So we went out, we bought this commercial mower. My dad, we would drive by this house every day in our neighborhood that had a trailer sitting in the driveway. He went and knocked on the door and said, "Hey, looks like you've got this trailer sitting out here that you're not using. Would you sell it to us?" And I think they sold us a trailer for $1,000. And my mom started cutting grass with me when I was 10 years old. And she cut grass with me all the way until I turned 16 and could drive myself.
Wow.
And so my parents, I don't know if they realized this, this entrepreneurial monster that they unleashed on the inside of me. But I became very passionate about business. So I worked with my mom. My mom taught me just tremendous lessons about life, about doing a job right the first time. Mm-hmm. And when you don't do the job right, you go and make it right. I mean, I'll never forget, I had a snowblower and would do snow blowing during the winter. And one year, I had been out all day snow blowing. We had a big storm. I get home, and one of my customers had left a voicemail at home on the answering machine. You guys probably don't even know what that is, but they left this voicemail saying that Mark had promised he would do my sidewalks, and my sidewalks weren't done. So I walk in the door. We didn't have cell phones quite yet. And my mom was waiting at the door, and she said, "Hey, Mr. Smith called. You promised to do his sidewalks. You need to turn right back around and march out there and get it done." So I was out there after dark with a flashlight, making sure I got the sidewalks done. But that's what my mom taught me, that you finish the job, you do it right. If you don't do it right the first time, you fix it and you make it right, And my mom also taught me, both of my parents really taught me just a tremendous work ethic. They're both incredibly hard workers. And all those years, my mom worked with me and she never complained about it, and it taught me so many valuable lessons in life. So, fast forward, I'm, now driving, have my mowing business going, and I basically would cut grass all day. During the summer, I was cutting grass all day. During the school year, I would go to school with my equipment loaded. I would, go and cut grass until dark, and then I would go home and I would do my homework, what little homework I did, and then I would go and do it all over again the next day, And so again, it was that work ethic that my parents instilled in me. But when I was young, like 7th, 8th grade, I was picked on a lot. I struggled in school. I really didn't like school. I'd been, diagnosed or they said I had a learning disability. Today they would say it's dyslexia. So I was in special tutoring and I just always struggled. And then I struggled to fit in with the kids, and the kids picked on me relentlessly. Today we would call it bullying, and it was hard. But I'll never forget one time I was at home. I was sitting at the table. I was crying about my day because the kids had been hard on me. And my mom said, "Son, it's okay because someday they'll all be working for you."
Oh my goodness.
So now here's the crazy thing about that is
I love it.
That later in life, I really carried that. I think I did start to say, you know what? That's right. I can outwork everybody. And that's not necessarily a good thing because later in life, it led to being a workaholic.
I struggle with that.
Yeah. And it's a struggle we all have, especially when you're an entrepreneur.
Of course.
Right. So, that said, though, my mom believed in me, and that little bit of encouragement showed me I did have something to give. There's a statistic out there that 35% of successful entrepreneurs, they have some form of dyslexia.
I was just going to say a majority of CEOs have learning disabilities.
Yep, they do. But the thing is I think where it benefited me the most is that I had to, one, find what I was really, truly passionate about. And then I had to pursue those things. And when I found the things that truly brought me to life, which schoolwork that was not the thing for me.
Yeah.
But when I found the things that brought me to life, it changed my life. And I became very driven in those areas. So being an entrepreneur, very driven in that. In high school, I wanted to be in broadcasting. I thought I wanted to be the next Peter Jennings. Again, another name you guys probably don't recognize. But he was the ABC news anchor. Back in the day, before 24-hour news cycle, we had like 3 networks, CBS, ABC, NBC, and every night, the news anchors would come on at 6 o'clock and they would report the news. And so I wanted to be Peter Jennings and sit at that desk for ABC News. And so I would stand in front of the mirror and I would say, "Mark Peebles, ABC News, Washington." Like I would always practice.
Yeah.
So I ended up in a radio program in high school, Centerville High School, and had a teacher that spoke in my life, Mr. Dunn. He said, one day he pulled me into his office. He said, "Mark, I think that you can go as far as you want to go in broadcasting, but God made you for sales." I was like, "Whatever, Mr. Dunn." My dad has been in sales my whole life, real estate. Yeah. And I said, "I'm just not interested in being in sales." He's like, "That's okay." He's like, "I just think that's what you're made for." So he sends me out on a sales call my junior year of high school. And usually you didn't start selling until your senior year. So I go into a Mexican restaurant, no longer there in Centerville, called Los Pyramides. And I go in and I get in front of the manager and I say, "I want to sell you a $25 hourly sponsorship on WCWT, the Centerville High School radio station." And he looked at me and he said, "No." And I was like, "What?" "I don't think you know what I'm offering you." So I went back to the station. I recorded a spot for him because I wanted him to know what that hourly sponsorship sounded like. And so I record this spot for him. I go back up to the restaurant the next day with my tape player. Man, I'm using a lot of terms. You might need to put definitions online. Okay, so we used to have this box that you'd put a tape. It's called a tape in it, cassette tape. And then I sat there and I hit play in front of this manager, and he listens to it and he goes, "Okay," and he pulls $25 out of the cash register and hands it to me, and it was on like Donkey Kong. Like I loved it.
That's when you got the fever.
I found a passion, right? And so going to my senior year, I'm the manager, the sales manager for our class. There's 13 students in the class, or 15 students, something like that in the class. So I'm the sales manager, and that year we sold $25,000 in sponsorships, and I sold $13,000 of them. Now, those we're not talking like $5,000 sponsorships, although I did land the largest sponsorship in the history of the station. But that said, I became the top salesperson in the history of WCWT, and it was a 25th anniversary on my senior year. And Mr. Dunn, I know that, there at the end of the year, he's looking at me going, "I told you,"
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
So I go into college. I know I want to go into sales. Mm-hmm. Right. And So I began doing sales internships every summer. I was very driven, very motivated, very focused. Met Elizabeth, and then my mother-in-law, or future mother-in-law, talked all the time about friends that she knew in pharmaceutical sales, and she actually got me very interested in being in pharmaceutical sales. So I became driven between my junior and senior year that I was going to be in pharmaceutical sales. And so I started, reaching out to everyone that I could possibly meet, networking. You guys talked about networking last week, I think. Yeah. And just networking, talking to people, getting to know people who are in pharmaceutical sales. And then I would hand them my resume and say, hey, would you help open a door with your manager to get me an interview? And so ultimately, I get that interview. One interview that I got was with Pfizer, with Jack Owen, who was my first manager. And he was hiring for a position in, they called it Dayton East. And he was like, would you be willing to go to Dayton? I said, well, yeah, that's home for me. Right. So sure, I'll go to Dayton. So I end up back in Dayton. I'm with Pfizer. And the whole time that I was with Pfizer, I was starting other businesses. It's like Dave Ramsey always talks about dead is dumb. And he'll tell his story about all the dumb stuff that he did. Well, I was the king of dumb stuff. So things that I did, if you just want to know some of my fun and funny stories, things that I did were things like I wrote a program on how to get into pharmaceutical sales. It was based on a friend of mine that I had helped get in. I coached him through the process. He goes in to the interview, lands a job. Ultimately, he passed away. He was 48 years old, passed away suddenly, and he and I had become very close friends. And after he passed away, I thought, man, Steve always told me I needed to write a book on how to get into pharmaceutical sales. And since I can't even read, I decided that I was
dyslexic man writing a book.
No, I decided I would do an audio program. So I liked it. That's why I like podcasting so much.
Right.
So I decided to do an audio program, and that audio program, I get into pharmaceutical sales. It was a 2 CD set. Do you guys know what CDs are?
I think I'm familiar with CDs.
Okay.
We need to post examples.
Might be a little,
getting a little bit more up your alley. Yeah, so we did this 2 CD set. I'll never forget. I found someone to press the CDs and put the design on there and everything for me. Elizabeth says, don't you think you should start with a small order of those? And I was like, no, I'm going to sell a ton of these things. So I ordered 1,000 of each CD. Okay, 2 CD set with the workbook. And back in that day, we were using Yahoo pay-per-click. It was like the equivalent of Google today. And for every one of those programs that I was selling for $50, I was paying about $75.
Ooh.
Yeah.
So you were in the red on that.
I was way in the red. I was way in the red. Years later, when we were in the middle of a move, Elizabeth is like, can we get rid of these CDs? And I was like, yes, I guess we can. And so we threw away like 990 of each CD. So, I had lots of failures like that. And ultimately, at that time, I had read a book by Robert Kiyosaki, Rich Dad, Poor Dad.
Yep, very familiar.
Okay, so a lot of great business people have read that book. I have a lot of respect for Robert Kiyosaki, so that this is not a bash on Robert Kiyosaki, but not only did I read his book, I read every book that he had. And then I went through Rich Dad coaching. We were paying a fortune for that. And everything we were doing, he talked about using OPM, other people's money, and use how to use debt. Well, I was using a lot of debt. I just wasn't making any money, any cash flow on the other side of it. And so that became a problem. September 29th, 2008 became a pivotal day in my life. And that's because I was holding a broker open house, which we don't do a lot of those in real estate anymore. But back then, every once in a while you do one. And this was more of a luxury home. And it was a listing that I had. So I held a broker open house. I think 2 old ladies came through that day, 2 older realtors for the free lunch or whatever. But I'm sitting on the couch of my client's house on September 29th, 2008. And I'm watching as Bear Stearns said they're going out of business, and Countrywide Mortgage says that they're going out of business, and this investment broker is going out of business, and it was the start of the real estate crash on that day. Yeah, and I remember the fear that I had, but I felt like we'll be able to make it. Well, went 7 months from that day without any income in real estate. I was the breadwinner in my family. And so,
and you're already in the red from buying all those
I'm
CDs.
already in the red.
Right.
Yeah, buying all those CDs. And, when I got into real estate out of pharmaceutical sales, like we didn't have income.
Mhm.
And so not having income, we were using our, investments that we had collected over the past few years of being in pharmaceutical sales, my investments, my 401k type stuff. We drained all of that to live. So when it got to that day in 2008, we didn't have anything to fall back on. And so 7 months, it was truly one of the most painful times of my life. Top two anyway, top 2 or 3. So it's December. My sister calls me. We're in the midst. We're losing our house. It's a mess. Voluntary repossession on a car, which was one of the most embarrassing things I'd ever had to do up to that point, where I'm walking into a dealership and signing paperwork and handing them keys to say, I can't afford this anymore. I was so ashamed,
Right.
So my sister calls me one day, and she says, Marky, now she can call me that. You can't.
Okay. Fine.
No, but Marin says, Marky, we have a couple of positions here. She was an academic dean at Miami Jacobs College, a for-profit college here in Dayton. She said, we have a couple of classes that we need someone to teach. And she said, I actually think that you would qualify to teach. And I also, think that it would help bring some income in for you, because I know you need income. And so I go and I interview with the lady that was hiring for the positions, and I got the job. And the first class they gave me was budgeting for personal success. So this is the class that they required every student who came in to take. They had to start their career or their education by taking budgeting for personal success. And here they're going to have a guy teaching them that's in the middle of losing everything. Right. So
The irony.
Honestly, who better?
Right. Yeah, I guess so. But at that time, I basically said, Lord, what are you doing to me? And I got an answer. And up until that point in my life, the Lord revealed to me that everything that I had done without a vision. And I was doing it for the wrong reasons. I was doing it to get rich, i.e. rich dad, poor dad.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And I wasn't doing it to build the kingdom. I wasn't doing it to have a positive impact on others' lives. I was chasing it after it for me.
Yeah.
And I'd done it all without a vision. And so it was at that time that I began to study vision and understand vision. And then the Lord challenged me to have a personal vision for my own family first. And so there's a scripture that I like. I know you guys talk a lot of scripture, and at the end of every podcast, right? You're giving scripture. Well, one of the scriptures that impacted my life the most was Proverbs 29:18, where there's no vision, the people perish, but happy is he who keeps the law. Another version of that is where there's no vision, the people cast off restraint, but happy is he who keeps the law. So the breakdown of that for me is that first off, if I don't have a vision for my future and the future of my family, it's going to perish, right? If I don't have a vision for my business, it's going to perish. If I don't have a vision for my children, they're going to perish, right? I need to have vision. Vision keeps things from perishing. It keeps things alive. But the other thing that vision does, and going to that other version where those that don't have a vision cast off restraint. If you think about restraint, you're restrained in, right? So when I have vision, I am restrained in my thinking. I'm restrained in my decision making. I'm restrained in the things that I decide to move forward on instead of running wild. There is a version that says that, casting off restraint. Another way that's said, I think it's like the Amplified version of the Bible says that people run wild. And that's what I had done up until this point in my life, is I had pretty much run wild with the things that I had done. So happy is he who keeps the law. What is the law? The law is what keeps us restrained, right? Yeah. And so so at that time, I feel this challenge from the Lord that I am going to have a personal vision for my family. And I sat down, I prayed through this, and my vision at that time became to leave a legacy spiritually and financially that will impact the generations of my family.
Is that your why?
That is, yeah, I mean, I guess you could say it's my why. Yep. It really is about the future generations of my family and leaving that legacy. But so breaking it down though, is that spiritually, I'm a follower of Jesus, and I don't hide that, right? It's very much a part of who I am. He is very much a part of who I am. And so my desire is that my children and my children's children and the generations after that would know Jesus and follow him, and that they would walk in their purpose and their calling from God. Financially, I do think it says in Proverbs that a good man leaves an inheritance to his children's children, but at the same time, I've always felt like I want to teach my children financially that what you have is not your own, and that we need to live life with an open hand. And so it's teaching the principles of generosity, which starts with tithing, and then it's being generous, in offerings. It's
Gifts
being
and
generous,
offerings.
being generous with organizations, and I'll state it here. I get in trouble for this a lot, but I don't make donations to political campaigns because I want to sow into things that are going to bring life, and ultimately I want to sow into things that are gospel centric, and so we choose not to sow into things that are political. We choose to sow into the things that are going to actually change lives, and politics doesn't change lives, right? So all of that to say, I have a generation that I know that I get the chance to have impact on. And that's Tommy, Olivia, and Alicia. And the amazing thing is since that December time of 2008, this has become my personal vision, and I'm starting to see the fruit of that vision in this generation. I don't know if I'll meet my grandkids because I'm not promised tomorrow, but I know that I have gotten to sow into and sow this vision and legacy into this next generation. And it's been amazing to see, because all of my kids are starting, I'm seeing them start to step into their purposes and their callings. And that has really been my heart. And they're incredibly generous, So that was the vision: leave a legacy spiritually and financially that would impact the generations of my family. I did have a brief stint where I left real estate for a couple of years. Again, it was an entrepreneurial dream where I ended up starting a restaurant brand called Oinkadoodle Moo. And so I was the founder of Oinkadoodle Moo. We ended up having, I think, up to 5 locations at one point. And really, we were tremendously underfunded. But one of the cool things, I feel like nothing is wasted. Like, I look back on my time starting Oinkadoodle Moo. Could I have pressed through and made things happen in real estate if I had stuck with it through those 2 years? Yeah, I probably could have. But there was such a just tremendous education that I got through starting Oinkadoodle Moo. So we started this way underfunded. Basically worked for 2 full years at less than minimum wage, working in a restaurant, making $28,000 a year. And,
Crazy.
And the Lord had really provided for us at that time. As we're losing our house, my uncle had a development north of Dayton, in the village of North Clayton. He was developing it. And there was this big old farmhouse on the property that they had told me this guy was coming to rent. The guy ends up backing out for whatever reason. And I said to my uncle's partner, "Hey, what are you gonna do with this place?" And he said, "I don't know. You guys interested in it?" And I said, "Maybe." So we go and look at it. It's a dream. Like, today, it would be my dream house. There's this beautiful mansion, overlooks rolling hills on acreage with a spring-fed pond in the backyard where there was wildlife galore. It was absolutely beautiful. And Dave, my uncle's partner, said, "Well, why don't you talk to Tom about it? See what he says." So I called my uncle. He said, "Why don't you rent it for me for $500 a month?" And I was like, okay, that was a lot of money for us in the middle of losing everything.
Mhm.
But I was like, that's a deal. We're not going to find that kind of rent for a beautiful 7-bedroom mansion like this, right?
Wow.
And so basically we move in. I go to pay him the first month, and he says, I know you guys have been struggling. Why don't you take a month and get on your feet? And I said, well, I appreciate that. So the next month I go back with my $500 to pay him, and he's like, just take another month. Well, the third month I go back and he says, listen, why don't you just consider this a blessing? You live there, you keep the grass cut, and it was a lot of grass to cut. But he said, you keep the grass cut, and you can live there rent free.
Wow.
So we lived there for 2 years rent free while I'm making like ultra Uber minimum wage, working in the restaurant. We're making so little money that we're like on WIC to buy milk and eggs, and we've got Medicaid, we've got government benefits that we're getting to be able to survive on.
What year was this?
This is back in this was 2009, 2010, and then coming into 2011. So
and how old were you at the time?
So I would have been, let's see.
We're revealing your age.
Yeah, let's see. When I started Oinkadoodle Moo, 2009, I would have been 28, 29 years old.
Okay.
Yeah. And so here I am. I've lost everything. I started Oinkadoodle Moo. We're going through tremendous struggle. At the same time, as all this is starting to take off, we find out we're pregnant. My wife was done having babies, right? She did not want to have any more because of hard pregnancies.
Yeah.
And here we are, we're broke, and we find out we're pregnant. And that's where, as I look back, I never felt like we were finished. The Lord provided Alicia. Couldn't imagine a life without her, because she's unbelievable. She's an amazing young lady.
Mm-hmm.
And she completed our family for sure,
Yeah.
But it was that pain of the time when there were so many unknowns in our life and so much instability, so many challenges.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So here we are, we're scraping by. It comes to 2011, and when it comes to government benefits, you have to reapply every year. And so it had come time for us to reapply, and I felt very convicted that I was developing a poverty mentality. And, I say this because I know that the benefits are there for people that need them in their times of need. But I think one of the challenges in society today is that people think that the government is going to become their stability. And so they develop this poverty mindset where they have to stay under a certain amount of income so that they can be able to stay on their benefits. And honestly, when you come off of benefits, to get benefits to replace what the government's providing you is way more expensive than whatever that income gap is,
Yeah.
And so, but I felt really convicted that we were taking on a poverty mentality and trusting the government to provide for us. And so I didn't reapply. And man, it caused a lot of tension between me and Elizabeth.
Yeah.
Because she needed that stability. The amazing thing, though, is that we started to see God provide so much in our lives during that time. And, we moved from Clayton in 2011 back south of town here to be a little bit closer to family. My parents rented us one of their houses. I jumped back into real estate, started selling houses again. And it was like every single year got a little bit better and a little bit better and a little bit better.
Yeah.
And so here we are, today. I came back full time into real estate in 2013. That was the year. And I had another business in between, a painting business. And actually, let me tell you a little bit about that, because that was a part of the story. We're living in this house that my parents were renting to us. And next door to the house, there was an eviction, another house that someone had been evicted out of. And the landlord is there, and my wife walks over and said, "Hey, are you going to have some work done on the house?" And he's like, "Yeah, we're going to have some things done." And she said, "Are you going to have some painting done?" And he's like, yeah. And she's like, well, my husband can paint. So I had painted in college a little bit, and honestly, we still needed the money, you know? And so I wasn't making money from Oinkadoodle Moo at the time. So I ended up talking to Scott. He was the landlord. They owned a ton of properties. I ended up painting this house for him. I get a nice paycheck out of painting the house for him. And I said, hey, can I get more of those? He said, yeah. But he said, here's the problem. I've got to have lead certified painters. And I said, well, what if I went and got my lead certification? Would you start sending me some? He's like, well, I have a primary painter that does the vast majority of our stuff. I said, well, I tell you what, will you just give me the stuff when he can't get to it? Ultimately, that turned into a painting business. At the same time, we're trying to sell franchises for Oinkadoodle Moo. And I had been nominated to the Ohio Restaurant Association Board of Directors by Dan Young that owns Young's Dairy. He gets me on the Ohio Restaurant Association's Board of Directors, which I really couldn't afford to be on that. But there were guys like Dan Young, but Dan Young saw something in me, and what an amazing man. I cannot say enough about what an amazing man Dan Young is. Then at the same time, we used to go to a big fast casual restaurant industry conference every year, and they loved our brand. We were building great relationships there, and I got nominated to be on the Fast Casual Industry Council. So here, I'm not really making money from the restaurant. I'm having to paint to make ends meet, and we have a fly-in in Washington where you go and lobby in Washington. And so here we go. I couldn't afford to fly in like everyone else did because we're just trying to make ends meet. So I drive. I get there. I stay with a friend because I couldn't afford the hotel that everyone was staying in. So I stay with a friend outside of DC. So, if you've ever been to DC, traffic is stupid there, Yeah. So I go to this Fast Casual Industry Council meeting, the 2 days before the National Restaurant Association event starts, where the Ohio Restaurant Association delegates come in. So I'm sitting in there. I pull out I've got my giant laptop bag with my giant laptop, and all these guys are pulling out iPads and all these things that have come out, around that time. This is probably back in, 2012. And so I just felt so out of place there. Like the CEO of Firehouse Subs was the chairman sitting right next to me at the table. And then the CFO of Raising Cane's is sitting right next to me. And there's all of these other brands. And I was the small restaurant representative. I think we had 4 locations at the time. So I felt very inadequate to be sitting in the room. We get through our meetings. Next day, we go to the Ohio Restaurant Association. Then they break us off to our Ohio delegation. We sit in John Boehner's office. He was the Speaker of the House at the time. We met with his staff. We met with other congressmen, other senators, or the senators from Ohio. And we're basically, pushing issues for the restaurant. We're lobbying on behalf of the Restaurant Association. And that day I walked around the entire time with Dan Young, and he was very well connected. He introduced me to a lot of people. But the reality was, when we were done with all the meetings, I couldn't afford to be gone another day, because if I wasn't painting, I wasn't making money. Yeah. And so I drive overnight to get home. And the next morning I'm sitting, I'm on my knees in a closet, and I am painting baseboards. So the day before, wearing a suit and tie, sitting with congressmen, senators, all these high-level restaurant people. The next day, I'm on my knees in a closet painting baseboards. And I felt the Lord speak to me that, if you are willing to be humble in everything that you do and trust me with it, I can sit you before kings. But I have to be humble enough to paint baseboards.
And what a great visual representation of just like the story that you just told. That is
100%.
Yeah, it is. It's amazing. It's amazing the education that I got from that period of my life, And so then I come back 2013. I'm back in real estate, and I called my dad and told him I was coming back in full time, and he actually cried on the phone with me. He was like, he was so thrilled that I was coming back in. But it was actually, I was on staff at a church. I'm a worship leader too. So I was on staff at a church leading worship. And the pastor is also prominent realtor, owns a Keller Williams in town, spoke a lot into my life at that time. And at one meeting we were at, he was like, Peebles, what are you doing? You were made for this. You were not made to be doing all this other stuff you're trying to do to make ends meet. He was like, you're made for real estate. Why won't you just jump back in? And it was like as if God just hit me upside the back of the head and said, yeah, what are you doing?
Yeah.
I went out. Elizabeth was in that meeting with me, and I went out. I get in the car with her. And if I had asked her 2 weeks before what she thought about me going back into real estate, she probably would have said, no way. That's why we lost everything.
Yeah.
And I said, hey, I really feel like I'm supposed to go back into real estate full time. And she said, I think so too. And
wow.
That was it. That's when I called my dad, told him I was coming back in. So 2013, I start back in. I again believe in vision. I believe in setting goals. I believe you've got to keep things in front of you. Okay, so I'm very big on the importance of not just having a vision, but then the smallest level of vision. I talk a lot about 3 levels of vision. That's my thing. I'm writing my book on that. Okay, so that's another podcast in the future. But goals. If you have a goal to lose 10 pounds and you can see yourself doing it, then gosh darn it, you're a visionary, know?
Yeah.
So I had a thermometer on my desk that, I was out in the bullpen at that time, and I had this thermometer that I was going to close 25 my first year back in, and then the next year was going to be 40, and then the next year after that was going to be 48 transactions that I was going to close. And what is amazing, it always seemed like the last week of the year I was highlighting off that last goal on there, and the real estate really grew from there. And we ended up being very successful. Our team in 2017 closed over 200 transactions. My dad had handed off the responsibilities of being team lead to me at that point. My sister was in the business, and 2017 just had a huge year, closing over 200 transactions. We ended up that year moving brokerages. We went to one of the big national virtual brokerages, if you know what I mean. No, but actually it was EXP. I don't care to say. I have a ton of respect for those guys that started that company, and it's a great company. But ultimately, after 2 years of being there, we just felt like we were supposed to start something of our own. And so that brings us to today, where now we have Navex Realty. Started it in February of 2020. I don't know if you guys remember, but in 2020, we had this global pandemic.
Yeah,
Ooh,
I do remember.
Was that called like COVID or something?
I don't remember what CDs looked like,
had
but
a
I do
beer
remember
name,
COVID.
if I'm not mistaken, like a Corona. Yeah, whatever.
Yeah.
No, so we started right before COVID. And man, it's been a wild ride. It's been a ton of investment on my part. But we're 4 years in now. We're at 100, sitting right about at 100 agents, just under 100 agents. But we're working on deals in multiple states, multiple cities, and really doors are open right now for expansion. So it's been a really exciting entrepreneurial journey. But I can look back at everything that I've been through, that whole story that I just told you.
Yeah.
And the only reason that we are successful today is because I had a great education from all of the dumb stuff that I did over the years.
And I feel like it built grit and persistency with you. Because we talked about it. I was actually on your team for a very short amount of time. And this has stuck with me. I remember when you were talking, because this is when you had just started the brokerage, and you were talking about trying to make payroll. And it just shows when you honor and are obedient to the Lord, what he does. I remember you were talking about making payroll, and you had just got $1 million deal.
Oh yeah. You were there for that.
I remember that.
Yep. Yeah. That was that is something my dad has always taught me. He said, if you're faithful if you give and you're faithful, God will always provide everything that you need. And that situation was one where I did not have money to make payroll that month. Didn't know where it was going to come from. I had this cash buyer hanging out there, over $1 million cash buyer, but he was looking for, an impossible find.
A unicorn.
He wanted the unicorn. He wanted the land, 75 acres, and had to have woods. And I mean, like all this stuff that I was like, it's going to be a long shot to find it, but eventually it'll come. Well, he calls me one day about 13 acres. I had shown him like 30-acre properties where he was like, it's not enough acreage for me. There's
Too
not
small.
enough space out here. And I'm like, space, you can't see anyone around here, And so we're going to look at this 13-acre property. And I'm like, hey, you guys realize that we just looked at a 30-acre property a few weeks ago and you said it wasn't enough, right? Are you sure? And he said, if this is anything like the pictures show, then Tammy, his wife, wants it. And I don't know that I have a choice, So we go through this property. It's like 1.4 million. And the views are spectacular. For this area, it's just beautiful views, beautiful property. I go to write the offer on it, and again, he's a cash buyer.
Yeah.
He says, I'll just offer full price on it. I don't know. We may have negotiated a little bit, but the amazing thing is that I said, well, how soon do you want to close? We can do, 14 days.
Mm-hmm.
We can do 30 days. We can really do anything you want to do. And he's like, I just assume get it closed. Why don't we do 14 days? And believe it or not, within that 14 days, it brought in every dollar that we needed in order to make payroll. And so,
coincidence? I don't think so.
No,
I don't think so.
I honestly, at this point in my life, I really don't believe in coincidence at all.
For sure.
So that was it. Like, make payroll, and I've seen that over and over again. My dad comes from the old school. He has this kind of mentality of, well, that's a lot of money to pay someone, So like we talk about hiring an assistant, and it was always a lot of money to pay someone. So when I wanted to hire the first transaction coordinator for our team that was going to be full-time with a full-time salary, he was like, that's a lot of money. And I said, I know, but we need to do this. And then it was hiring a listing coordinator. And he would say, well, that's a lot of money, Dad. Why can't our transaction coordinator do that? Well, because we do a lot of transactions, and they need to be able to focus on that. And so every time I've added, my dad's always been a little nervous. Now, my dad is my greatest mentor in my life. Okay. So he's also, him and my mom have been like my biggest cheerleaders besides Elizabeth. But I live with Elizabeth, so sometimes she cheerleads by hitting me in the face. But no, I'm just kidding.
We love you, Elizabeth.
Yeah, right. Yeah. No, I really do love her. I couldn't live without her. But that said, it always made my dad nervous when I'd hire that next person. Yeah. So like bring that up to today, and I start the year, and I'm like, you know what? We need a full-time, marketing communications director that can take the bull by the horns and run with it, because up until this point with Navex, we haven't really been doing a lot of quote marketing, right? Mm-hmm. And so I'm like, you know what? We need to do it. And the right person was hanging out there, and it was going to cost us way more than we felt like we could afford to get her. But at the end of the day, I look at it and I'm like, you know what? If I invest this, what kind of return can I get 100%. On that? And you know what? So you have to make some calculated decisions along the way. But I truly believe God provides for all of it if you're doing obedient. It to honor him and being obedient.
I agree. And Mark, I tell you what, you said so many great things throughout that story. Something that stuck out to me, and I don't know if this is somebody else said, but the power of one. And what do I mean by that? When no one else believes in you, one person does. One person speaks life into you. Started with your mom. When in your school, and when you were when you were doing your lawn care business, then it got in to your teacher at Centerville, and then it got into the guy at Keller Williams that you were talking about. And it seems like in each season, the power of one person that just speaks life in motivation and is just what you need to continue to propel in that direction. I think that that's super powerful.
Yep. And you know, and I know I joked about Elizabeth, but honestly, having a wife that, first of all, my wife is way more godly than I am. And she is just an incredibly committed woman. She's been an amazing mom to our kids. Like, I really credit, you know I've had a little bit of influence on our kids, but they had a mom that has just been incredible. Right. And so, Elizabeth, though, you know, she has spoken so much life into me. And even I've been through a hard season really since July. You know, had a family member that, and I won't get into the full story here, but I had a family member that I had to let go from my company.
Yeah.
And it was a really painful situation, and it was a real loss to me. And then a couple of weeks after that, I had my daughter go off to ministry school that was supposed to be a senior this year. And that was crushing because Olivia, my middle child, she's the one that can say dad, and like my heart goes soft and I'm like, whatever you need, what do you need, you know?
Yep.
And that girl just has a way with me. She always has. So those two events happened like back to back. And so I found myself last fall really getting into a funk. And there were a lot of people that were speaking into my life at that time, but having Elizabeth there as a partner in life that is godly, that really truly does love me and care about me, and would just say little things to speak life into me. I don't know what I would have done, you know, without her.
Me and Zach talk about that all the time, about how like our wives allow us to 10x what it is that we're doing, because the encouragement from a mouth of a woman goes miles in the heart of a man.
Yep.
I agree. What I like to say.
And I mean, other than making the decision to follow the Lord, I think the person that you select to be your spouse is the single greatest decision that you will make.
It really is.
And it is make or break.
It is.
It really is.
It is. Yeah. I'm watching. It's interesting now because I have a son that's 20 and he fell in love with a Georgia girl and she's a real sweetheart, but you know, he said that she is the one, and they're talking about the future, you know, and it really is interesting now to be in a dad perspective on that, and just to begin to see him making that life decision. And then there's always that like part of me that's like, oh, is it the right one? But I think part of it too is one, we don't ever as human beings make perfect decisions because none of us are perfect. And so the great thing is, when I landed Elizabeth in college, I don't know if she had blinders on or what God had to do to make that happen. But honestly, we both brought our own wounds and baggage and hurt. And, you know, she had a upbringing that wasn't exactly ideal. And so there was stuff that was brought into it. But what I found is that in marriage, you make that decision, but then you decide every day that you're going to stick with it
100%.
And when you make that decision every day that you're going to love that person and that person only, it's amazing like what you can get through. And we've been through, I just gave you my story. Guess who was there for all of that?
Her.
Right?
Yeah.
She was there for every bit of that. And I would say I put her through a lot.
Yeah.
But man, and what you're saying, like the words of a woman, she's the one that can absolutely like turn my day around with the things she says.
Biblically, she's the one that has to sit there and support you and do all that stuff too. So it hit her just as much as it did you, if not more. I kind of want to. So your whole journey, we just got through your whole story. Right. A lot of mess in there, a lot of success. I kind of want to put you on the spot. What would you say for those listening? What would you say if they wanted to be an entrepreneur? What personality traits or characteristics does it take to be successful?
Man,
to come out on that other end,
so
like you have.
I think number one, it's the no quit mentality. Mm-hmm. And I will be, if I'm going to be brutally honest, like I probably wanted to quit last week, right?
Yeah.
There's a lot of days I want to quit.
Totally.
And I think that to be successful as an entrepreneur, you just have to say, okay, I want to quit, but I can't quit.
Yeah.
And so it's that no quit mentality that's very important. I think creativity plays into it, because part of being an entrepreneur is we've got to solve problems for people that sometimes they don't even know that they have, right? And so there's got to be some creativity and innovation. But then probably one of the things that has given me the best opportunity for success is the people that I put around me.
Oh,
and so
100%.
Network.
It's network. So I'm part of a group called C12. It's a Christian CEO entrepreneur group.
Oh, yeah.
I've got high level people in there that are way more successful than I've been up to this point in my life, that I can lean on, ask questions of, share a ton of wisdom and counsel with me. But then it's also the people that are in my organization. So when it comes to starting an organization, first thing, you got to have vision for it.
Yeah.
Right. And so with NavX Realty, our vision is to be a company full of world changers that happen to work in real estate. What does that vision mean? Well, I believe at the core of every human being, we have this innate desire to change the world. No one wants to get to their funeral someday and find out that all that was said about them, not that you're going to know anything at your funeral, but all that was said about you was that you made a lot of money and sold a lot of houses, Spencer, right? No one, if that's all that's said at you at your funeral, that was a meaningless life.
Yeah.
It's about the people that are going to get up and say, man, if it weren't for Spencer and Zach, I mean, I don't think you're going to die together and have the same funeral. But no, if it weren't for that Zach dude and the way that he spoke into my life at that moment, I wouldn't be standing here today.
Yeah.
That's the meaningful thing. That all happens through relationship. And so I think with an organization, you have to have a vision, but then you've got to have people to support that vision. And what I love about my team, my leadership team, and a lot of the agents that we have as well, is that they totally believe in the vision of the company. Yeah. And I've said many times, like my business is my ministry, right? And so I'm not out proselytizing in my business, but I want to help people. And this is my purpose statement in life, is to help others live their best lives and achieve ultimate success. If I'm doing that, then I'm going to ultimately love my life. And so I've got this team around me that totally believes that is bought in. They bought into the culture, they bought into the values, and they bought into that vision that, yes, not only are we world changers, but we're helping others to be world changers as well. And the service that we provide to them will ultimately lead to their success.
I tell you what, Mark, I could not agree more. Like, people are so important. And that's kind of why we talked last episode.
Yeah, that was our whole topic.
The value of people. So obviously, current day, we're sitting here in NavX, you're talking about your team. That didn't just poof, boom, it's there, right? So because this is a little bit more of an entrepreneurial podcast, I want to dive in a little bit to the building process of NavX and where you're at now, and how did you hire? How did you create that team of great people? And I guess to start it from the ground zero, when and how did you kind of get the idea or vision, I want to start my own brokerage?
Yeah. So when we were with a big independent brokerage, left and went to EXP, and it was while we were at EXP that, again, we started looking at how much money we were putting in and started to think, okay, what's the real value in what they're bringing here? And that's kind of when the ideas started flowing on how could we really bring value to agents. Now, in order for that to happen, and probably the reason that we went to EXP in the first place instead of just going straight into starting our own brokerage, was that I didn't have the missing piece. In fact, one of my favorite books that I read and had a lot of impact on me was called Rocket Fuel. It's by Gino Wickman, he's kind of an entrepreneurial savant. The guy's brilliant. Great thing, though, little side note, is that his dad is Floyd Wickman, who is a he's an old school, very well-known real estate coach. So look up Floyd Wickman, the Floyd Wickman program. But Gino Wickman wrote this book, Rocket Fuel. It's about the relationship between the visionary and the integrator. So every great visionary needs a great integrator. So one of the examples he uses in there is Walt Disney. Walt Disney never would have been as successful as he was if it weren't for his brother Roy Disney, who was making sure that all these checks that Walt was writing were getting covered in the background. Yeah. And so I had my brother-in-law had come into real estate back in 2019. And he was a big piece of being able to move ahead because he had become very much an integrator to me, where I could have the vision, I could have the ideas. He would babysit and manage my vision ideas because sometimes you shouldn't act on every idea that you have. And he would help me to tame that down a little bit. But at the end of the day, he wanted to see the vision move ahead. And so he would very much help me put things in place that I either didn't have the capacity, the know-how, whatever it was, to put them in place. And then at that time, when we made the transition over, we had Kimmy Miller. She was our transaction coordinator on our team. And then we had Lisa Harvey, who was our listing manager on our team. If it weren't for the early days of Kimmy and Lisa, who were very systems minded, like beginning to build systems in the background and processes that we could use to help provide support to agents, even when we were, a dozen agents, the things that they were doing were like mission critical. And so I give them a lot of credit for where we are now. And the cool thing is that we just promoted Lisa from, we really never had a great title for her, but she was like our onboarding transition specialist. But then she was also doing like all the MLS compliance stuff. Well, we just made her our chief navigation officer, really cool. Overseeing all of our operations in the company. And what is awesome is she's my longest tenured employee at this point. She's
amazing.
She is unbelievable.
Yeah. Love her.
Kimmy actually is unbelievable too, but she became mom to twins. And so we lost her at least for a while. Hopefully Kimmy comes back someday. She's always got an open door with us. But Lisa, we gave her this new role, and it is like we flipped a mega switch inside of her. And her level of leadership, just with the title change and acknowledging a new job description and things, it's giving her new responsibility, she is like off the chain amazing. Okay?
That's awesome.
But she's proven it year after year. Look, I'm here. I believe in the vision. I'm going to do what it takes. Now we've given her this higher level, and we are like, we're positioned to take off. So I think getting the right people around you is very important, and those are two critical. Now, the other critical person that came in is John Hennon. John, he's a financial guy. So that was a big missing element that we had, that we were fumbling through for the first couple of years of NavX. John has come in, and he is really he's the true integrator that believes in the vision. He's told me many times, and it has been a tremendous encouragement to me by saying, Mark, I am here to make sure that you are successful.
That's awesome.
And in that, it makes me in turn want to make him successful.
For sure.
John is actually, he is now my partner in NavX Realty.
Awesome.
He has earned equity into the company. So he's a partner in the company. But basically, now we've got a core team. Now, once you have that core team in place where you've got the critical elements in place, now you start adding the outside pieces, and you're building out the team to the ideal team, right? Yeah. So one of the things that would make an ideal team is having a marketing communication person, taking some of those responsibilities off of Lisa and actually launching marketing, which we had never done up until this point, right?
Which is hugely important from a marketing guy.
I know. Zach, don't start looking at our stuff yet. But no, we actually, we're getting more stuff out there. But at the end of the day, we were like, let's add this to the team. We waited, we found the right cultural fit, And culture's a big thing. If we don't feel the cultural fit, and I'm not the only one that makes these decisions, I bring my whole team in for interviews to let them interview people because I want to make sure they feel comfortable about the person culturally.
Totally.
The other one, John, came to me a couple of months ago, and he said, well, it's been probably 4 or 5 months ago, and he said, Mark, I'm starting to feel very overwhelmed, and like I can't keep everything straight and get everything done that we need. So we brought in an IT guy, just part-time contract work, who is like in the short amount of time that he's been here, revolutionizing our back end, things that Spencer's with Navex. So Spencer would never see the things that he's revolutionizing for us, but he has actually taken John's whole demeanor, being under stress, and changed all of that. John is like, Timmy's amazing, and then at the same time, we also hired my son, Tommy. He's in college working remote, but he helps do payments for John, so it's basically, you can only do so much. You talked about 10X. You can only do so much. You've got the core team there. You start pulling in these extra resources, and the extra resources, the extra people are what are going to make for the next 10X, right?
Yeah.
So I feel like with my base team, I got to the 10X point that I could get to.
Yep.
Now I'm looking at the next level of 10X, which is multi-state and multi-city expansion.
Like your dad says, though, it's so scary to think about hiring somebody.
It is.
But those people allow you to work on your business, which ultimately you could do bigger picture stuff and help grow the company.
So all of this is so important, but if you have any advice, hiring people and hiring the right people may arguably be one of the biggest things in building a business.
Right.
So do you have any advice for us? Because Tawny with the Z&T agency, we're starting to get into the conversations of, well, we're kind of getting tapped out with what we have. Do we need to hire? Do you have any advice on how to make sure you're hiring the right people?
Yeah. So here's where one of the big areas where we have had success is that we have hired people that we have observed working. So for example, we just hired Natalie Correa. She's our director of engagement. So marketing, communications, events. Natalie was the children's pastor at our church. I go to a church called City Gate Church. Okay. It's a large church. So she was the children's pastor, and every single weekend at our church, they don't just do kids church, they do an event. It's basically an event every single weekend. And we observed for the past, I think, 3 or 4 years that she's been in that position, how amazing that she was, right? And so when we found out that, the church was about a 30 or 40 minute drive from her house, she just had a little one. They want to expand their family. When we found out that she wanted to step down from that position, my wife actually said to me, you better find a way to hire Natalie, right?
Yeah.
But we were able to observe her work. The other one, Timmy, that came in and is our IT guy. Yeah. Yep. Timmy, my wife and I were part of starting a school called Chess Christian School. Actually celebrates 10th anniversary this week. So we were one of the first 4 families in Chess Christian, and Timmy came on very early on. And so for probably the past 9 or 10 years, we've seen all the stuff that he's done for Chess.
Gotcha.
So when we found out he wanted to take on some extra side work, we're like, Timmy, can you help us out? Right. And so it was observational there. John Hennon, he had been in a Bible study with me. And so we were meeting in a discipleship group every single week for, probably 2 or 3 months, and really getting to know each other on a more intimate level, getting to know about each other's lives, our past. And I started looking at this guy going, he's got a lot of amazing skill sets. So one day when he comes to me and said he was looking for a job at the time because a family business had been sold and he had been there 30 years. So, they kind of moved him out of the family business when they sold it. And so he was looking for another job, and he said, I feel like I'm supposed to come to work for you. And I was like, ha, I can't afford you. But the reality is I had spent like 3 months observing who this man was and the integrity that he had. And it was like, we need him,
Yeah.
And now I don't know what I would do without him. Right. And so one thing I love is that he's teaching my son, like, his accounting methods, the way, and I'm like, because my son likes that stuff. I think he's weird, but
Yeah.
but I do not like that stuff at all.
I don't like it either.
But the thing is like, I think observational first is a great way. And then the Dave Ramsey model of hire slow, fire fast.
Yeah.
Is always wise as well, which when we hired Lisa, we did an online ad somewhere. I can't even remember where at this point. We were upfront about, the values of the company, what we were looking for. I think we interviewed her like 3 times as a team, asked her to write samples because we were hiring her as a listing manager. We wanted to see that she could write a description.
Yeah.
We had her go through a process and we hired her, and, now on my observation, I'm like, she'll be a high. We made her C-level this year, but when we have 20,000 agents across the United States, she will be a C-level executive in this company, and it's because we've been able to observe the things that she's able to do. So
cool.
Yeah. So that's what I recommend.
20,000
people you can observe are great. Yeah, I believe it.
So is that the goal? You want to get to 20,000?
Honestly, the numbers goal for me, if we have 20,000 people in the company, 20,000 agents in the company, that's 20,000 agents that I get a chance to have influence and impact with,
Totally.
Plus the ones outside. But I do believe that we're going to be a national company. I can't say where, but we just put together a deal for a region out west that it'll be a multi-state deal that we're putting together out there. We're working on Indiana right now. We're working on Kentucky right now, and that's just the start. But here's the thing: 2 years ago, I really couldn't consider this because I didn't have the team in place. Now I've got the team in place. We can do anything we want to do.
Let me ask you this. So it sounds like you're really starting to build a business. You're going from, just kind of the beginning stages to, hey, we're really building a business. And if you don't want to answer this, totally fine. Tell me to go pound sand. But do you have a vision of, as you continue to grow this thing, and as money is never an issue, because you get to 20,000 agents, man.
Yeah.
I mean, you're going to be.
I'll actually get a paycheck.
You'll finally get.
You'll be doing okay. Do you think that you will ever get to the point, once this is built, that you stop selling real estate because you have such a heart for impact and helping people with vision and all this type of stuff? Do you see yourself, once you have this built, taking a step back, letting this run, and you get to just live within your passion?
Yeah, honestly, if I did that, I wouldn't see it as a step back. I would see it as a step forward. I love selling real estate, but real estate does take a lot of time. It's very time consuming.
Yeah, it is.
Right now, I make my living on selling real estate. So I've never taken a paycheck from NavX. They say it takes 5 years to be profitable in a business. Well, at year 4, we are now break even. And my goal is at some point this year, I start to take a salary and stop investing money. I don't have to invest any money anymore, but I'm going to start taking a salary this year, which is a really good thing. But at the same time, I still have to make my living really selling real estate. And I love it. I love when someone walks into a house and you can see there's a difference between showing someone a house that they're not in love with and then showing them one that all of a sudden is home.
They just
their
light
whole
up.
Demeanor changes, right? Yeah. And I love it. Last weekend, I helped a young physician that had moved to the area. I'd helped her rent a year ago, and I helped her land her dream home last weekend. We won in a very competitive market, and I love making those calls still. And I love the fact that these are lifelong relationships, For
sure.
So there is something that I truly love about that. Will I have to step back out of it? I will. Since I started the brokerage, I've gone from selling over 100 homes every year myself down to, the 40, 50 homes a year, which is fine with me because I know that ultimately I'm working on full-time running in my purpose. And so, yes, I will step back, but I look at it, let's say not just a step forward, but it's a leap forward in doing to what I'm truly called to do. When, as an example, I teach a class called X Plan, that is to help agents to define their vision, define their destination, discover their purpose, and then plan their journey. And basically, when I go and I teach X Plan, man, I come out and I feel like I could run 1,000 miles. I can,
your cup's full.
Yeah. And that's what I absolutely love to do, right? This kind of thing where I'm getting to share my story and encourage others with my story and all the stupid stuff I've done. Hopefully someone heard something here and they're like, well, I'm never doing that. Yeah. Good. That's what I want. That like lights a fire inside of me.
Yeah.
Do I get a fire lit when, the client lands a home? I do, but I realize that's not my bigger calling, my bigger purpose. For sure. So my plan, my son is actually working on getting his real estate license. I have not sought to grow another big team. My dad still works very little in the business. He's a principal broker for our company. But at the end of the day, I'm not looking to grow a big team, but I do hope that my son or maybe one of my nephews will one day step in and start to take some of this business, because I have built a phenomenal sphere of influence.
Yeah.
And so if they want to come in and partner with me on it, I would love to see that happen, to care for my clients. And then at the end of the day, do what I'm truly made to do.
That's so cool. This is, kind of on topic, but not. It's just a curiosity of mine, because I did come from the investment real estate space, working for a REIT hedge fund type thing. Do you dabble in investment real estate at all, or are you just primarily traditional?
Well, I didn't give you that part of my story, but I did a lot pre-crash. We had flipped a lot of houses. We've done a lot of stuff. That was back in the days where, you would make $10,000 to $15,000 on a flip. Today, it's just crazy how much. I look at how much money people are making on flips, and I'm like, well, yeah, that makes it a legit thing. Yeah. To tell you the truth, I do not enjoy flipping properties. I don't even enjoy, rental proproperties as much myself. However, I believe in those things. I believe that real estate, there's 1,000 ways to make money in real estate.
100%.
And my job is to advise someone on how to do that. So I always encourage agents that are in our company, or we have market partners that open their own market centers. I encourage them, go and own real estate. So I own my office building. That's my one, big real estate investment. And then my wife and I are in the process of purchasing an assisted living facility, which will own the real estate and the business on that.
Oh, okay. Very cool.
So I'm definitely a believer. I'm just taking a little bit different path than just the flipping and then buying single family residential housing.
For sure.
When you look at investing, I do believe in balancing a portfolio. Even though I'm going to be honest, I've not been great on my 401k, my, SEP IRA. I haven't been great at that stuff.
I'm a real estate guy.
Yeah. But I've put a lot of my investment into business because I love business. I'm passionate about business. There's risk in business. But to me, investing in business as an entrepreneur is a lot of fun.
And you're investing in yourself.
It is.
Preaching to the choir. I love this. I love
well,
this.
So that's what we do, right? Yeah. So Navex has been an investment for me. And to tell you the truth, I want to keep Navex a family-owned company. I'm not looking to go public. I don't want to build it up and sell for millions of dollars, because this is, for me, it's about more than the money. It's about the impact, right? It's about the ministry piece of it. You. And so that is really my heart with Navex. But the assisted living facility, I would love to build that up. But at the same time, there's real people that live there. There's veterans that live there that, man, my wife and I have just really come to love these people, And so we get to serve that whole group of people, but it's also a really good business and real estate investment. Yeah. And then my office, we use it as co-working space, which we have Navex Realty operating out of there. We've got a lender operating out of there. We got a bunch of I think we've got 3 or 4 attorneys. We've got several businesses that just rent conference rooms. We have a web designer and other people that are employed that rent space.
Well, I mean, I can speak to that too, because the co-wo portion too, right? My Tuesday morning networking group.
That's right.
We meet at co-wo.
That's right.
So we're a part of that as well.
Yep.
Yeah.
Co-wo house, co-working house.
Yeah.
That's kind of where I am. I will own more real estate.
Yeah.
I believe in real estate as an investment. So I definitely will own more real estate, but I also really love business. So for me, it's exciting to invest money in business.
Yeah.
Couldn't agree. Couldn't agree more. That kind of gets into Hormozy. Hormozy's thesis is investing in a business too.
Yeah.
I just really resonate with that as well. Because I mean, yeah, you can invest. I mean, I'm not saying that investing into your retirement, your 401k, it's a bad thing, but you know
what I tell real estate clients, anyone that is buying a house with me, which I kind of mainstay of my business. I've worked with a lot of physicians in my career. It's just a connection that I've had.
Yeah.
And we've been very blessed to have it. And so we've worked with a lot of physicians, and I always tell them, even a first-time home buyer. I was with a first-time home buyer yesterday. Yes, I still work with first-time home buyers. And I told him yesterday, I'm like, look, the first place you buy doesn't need to be your dream home. Buy a place that either one is going to have good resale, and I'll coach you on that, or two, and more importantly, that you can keep as a rental property.
That's literally what our objective was with this house.
Yes. And it's perfect for it.
Exactly.
Not that we're sitting in a house. We're sitting in a fancy studio downtown.
Cat's out of the bag.
No, but that's brilliant. At your age, that's exactly what you want to do. And I look back, if I had all of the properties that I owned before the crash, I would be a very wealthy man right now. Yeah. But I lost everything in the crash, and we weren't wise before that. I'm a lot more wise now with the things that I do.
Well, the only reason why we're this way is because of people like you.
Yeah,
honestly, and I kind of beating a dead horse here, but we've talked about this in a couple of our last podcasts of the analogy of a dumb person makes a mistake and they continuously make that mistake.
Yep.
A smart person will make a mistake and they'll learn from it. Right.
Yep.
A wise person sees somebody else's mistakes and they avoid it altogether.
That's right.
And it plays into the mentorship piece.
Yep.
And so, the only reason why we have this mentality now is because we're fortunate enough to live in a world where we have access to people like yourself.
With your story.
And exactly. And then, we're able to share that to multiple different other people that listen to the Blueprint podcast.
Yep.
So you can be a mentor for them as well.
Yeah.
Super cool.
Awesome.
Yeah.
I love it.
Mark, any wise words before we sign off on the Blueprint podcast today, would you say to the listeners?
Do you want like smart wise words?
His wit is legendary. As you couldn't tell from our schoolgirl giggling at the beginning of the episode.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. I do love to laugh. And so wise words, laugh a lot.
Yeah.
Because man, I will tell you, life is hard. I don't care what part of life you're in. I mean, I gave you my story. That was hard and a grind. And the whole way through, I can remember times of laughter and a lot of joy in that, even though we were grinding it out and it was so hard. And today we're still grinding it out. It's still hard, but learn to laugh and live a life full of joy.
Find joy in the journey.
That's excellent.
Yeah.
That's really what we're doing,
right.
Is finding joy in the journey. So learn to laugh. And then have a vision. That's a big thing. I think you talked about starting with the end in mind in the first episode. And I've always been that way. One of the things I think you used a similar analogy to what I've always used, where you said, if you're going to get on a plane and fly somewhere, then you need to know where the destination is. And I've always said, if I'm going to pull out, I think I dropped my phone like halfway through today, but if I'm going to go somewhere, I'm going to pull out my phone and I'm going to open up Apple Maps or Waze or Google Maps or whatever you use. If you're on an Android and you're using Google Maps, you're weird. But
I couldn't agree. I love
right.
you.
Well, the thing is, man, every time you go to text someone on an Android, it comes up green, and it's like so offensive to your spirit.
It's so
terrible.
I
have people I love that are doing. Okay, so anyway, but no, you're going to pull up your Maps program and. The crazy thing is if you don't plug in the destination, you get no direction, Right. And so, so I feel like the first thing that you need is vision.
Yeah.
You need a vision, not just thinking vision for your business. And vision is not how much money you're going to make. That's that. I would put that in more of a goal category, but you need vision for your life that matters. And I really believe that if you don't have vision, that things will perish around you, that you're not going to have restraint, right? And so I go back to that 2008, that pivotal time for me when I'm in the middle of losing everything, and the Lord challenges me to have vision for my own family and to leave a legacy spiritually and financially that impact generations of my family. I've said it thousands and thousands of times. I've told hundreds and hundreds of people what my vision in life is. And I think you need that if you're going to be successful. But if it's about being successful in business, you got to have a vision that matters for yourself, your family first.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Because if it's about your family, if it's about you and your family before your business, then you have a reason to be in your business.
You have a bigger why.
Yeah.
Right.
And on that, and on the vision, beginning with the end in mind, it's something that resonates for me is the analogy is because, we are all Christians. And I think I said this when I was working with you of someday when we pass away, not saying that this is going to be how it is, but I just envision that if it is this way and we're standing in front of the Lord and he presents us the person that he ultimately created us to be, actualizing all of our potential. I want me standing there beside that person to be identical twins and not complete strangers.
That's good. That's really good.
Yeah. And with vision and incorporating that into my vision of this is what I want to be.
Yeah.
God created me for a purpose, on purpose, with potential to go impact people. I need to make sure I'm holding up my end of the bargain.
Right.
And when things get tough, I want to make sure that I keep that in mind and just say, this is who I got to be.
Yep.
Keep on going. So that's a little thing that kind of resonates with me.
Yep, absolutely. The other thing though, when times get tough, you mentioned that, and that's I'll leave this as my last bit of wisdom. So I've said laugh a lot, right?
Yeah.
And we've definitely gotten to do that a little bit today. Then have a vision. I think another form of vision that's incredibly important is you need to dream. Okay. So here's the thing. You can have this big, I always say it's your big God-given vision. That's your big vision. That's the legacy that you're going to leave. That's the who you're going to be. That's the who you're going to be known as or remembered as, right? So that's my big God-given vision. But you've got to dream along the way. In Proverbs, it tells us, that hope deferred makes the heart sick, but a dream fulfilled is a tree of life. And so I think what's that? Proverbs
13:12.
13:12. There you go.
Yep.
Yeah, we talked about this. But here's the thing. If all you have is the big vision, you're going to hit these hard times and it's really easy to die inside and want to give up. But if you have a dream that you're working towards, and that moment when that dream is actually fulfilled, it is a tree of life. So I always encourage people, be working towards a dream. And we won't get in it today, but I always tell a story of taking my son on a big trip to the Grand Canyon and how that was a dream of mine. And today I can still think back on that and it just brings life to me because it was a longing fulfilled, something to do one-on-one with my son. But dream. You have to have dreams along the way.
Couldn't agree more. So last thing, coming from a marketing guy, you talked about how you hired a marketing person. I mean, exposure's huge. So where can the Blueprint audience find and support you, Mark?
Sweet. Well, go to, we have a YouTube channel that we're starting to really build out on, which is youtube.com/real life and real estate. So there we are posting our Real Life and Real Estate podcast, which you can subscribe to as a podcast. That's available on all the platforms. So that's Real Life and Real Estate on YouTube and on podcast. With Real Life and Real Estate, I also do Monday Mindsets. So every Monday, we're starting to launch a different Monday Mindset. And then the videos will post on that page as well. I also do a consumer real estate show called Real Talk Real Estate Show. So you can follow that podcast. And then if you want to find me on Instagram or LinkedIn, most of them, it's, whatever, Instagram.com/It's Peebles. My whole life, people have said, hello, is this Mr. Pebbles? No, it's Peebles. So ITS Peebles, it's Peebles. And then that's on Instagram. I think Facebook, I had to do It's Mark Peebles. Someone had stolen my It's Peebles handle, but it's okay. So I think that gives you some places that you can go and get some of the content.
And then you own a lot of domains.
I own a lot.
We touched on
I own a lot of domains out there.
You got a lot of shows, a lot of YouTube channels. So you got a lot going on. So it means the world to us that you're here today.
Hey,
100%.
This is awesome. I want to see this podcast be successful. I love how you talked about in the beginning to be in the top 1%. How many in a row do you have to do?
21 episodes to be in the top 1%.
21 episodes. So with Real Talk Real Estate Show, we started that in May of 2022, I think, was when we started it. And we definitely got over that 21 episode. I think we were at like 60 or 70 episodes. Then we took a break from it, and we're relaunching it right now. So especially with all the news in the real estate industry.
Blueprint listeners, you have shown Spencer and I a ton of love.
Yep.
Make sure you go show Mark some love too.
Guys.
Yeah, go follow him on all the socials. Check out his podcast. But as always, feel free to like and subscribe to the Blueprint Podcast.
Yep.
And we will see you next week.
See you next week. Peace.